Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Pre-Race. Joe here, along with Julia, Alex, Isha, and Joshua. A full house here, and a big hello to our viewers in the chat room. Deem us one of our regulars. Here we go. Very excited to have you in the chat room. Encourage everyone in the chat room participate with your questions, comments, and be sure to invest in us through the Patreon page, linked in the video description. College Show, Mark Robin, and David, our newsman. Invest in us each and every month right here on the Grid Network. Now, unfortunately, before we get started with the weekend preview, we'll get started with some breaking news that came out about an hour and a half ago. Noah Gragson from Legacy Motor Club was suspended by Legacy Motor Club this morning. The suspension is in response to liking an inappropriate and racist social media post. Noah Gragson stated through Twitter that he is accepting responsibility. In his quote, he said he was disappointed in myself for the lack of attention, and I try to appreciate everyone. I try to treat everyone equally, no matter who they are. I simply messed up. Now, we will have a full report on Grid tonight as more details come out. Josh Berry will be in the car for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Michigan. And unfortunately, this is very unacceptable behavior from a driver entrusted by companies, sponsors, the team, going out there, being a role model, and just very unfortunate. And we hope Noah realizes the significance of what he did and truly learns and better himself. Now, of course, one of the big races we're going to be talking about starting first off in this busy race weekend, because we have Julia here. That means we got MotoGP. MotoGP's back after a long summer break. And we saw quite some surprises in the sprint race today, starting off with, well, we all have to say, the big win. Alex Marquez taking that win. What a race, a hard-fought race with Jack Miller up there with Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin. Meanwhile, Pecco Bagania, the points leader, 14th place finish. Just nothing in this race seemed to be going right. Lousy start, nothing going on. Julia, starting with you, could we see a similar result tomorrow?
I think it's gonna depend on the weather, to be honest, because the first prognosis were saying that tomorrow is gonna be really different from today. That there will be no rain. That would be a good day. But then the prognosis started to change, and they're saying that there may be rain tomorrow. So it is possible that we'll get the same result. And honestly, I think it would be really nice spectacle for the fans, as we've seen Alex Marquez finally winning, and I think it was a great thing to see for many fans after he came up to MotoGP class and was really striving while at Honda, and now on the Ducati he's finally there and he's showing why he was so good in Moto2. And also I think we had a great fight showing that Marco Bezzecchi is a big threat to Pecco Bagania, and he's even more as Pecco just didn't perform today. He was really angry with his qualifying. Of course, we've seen how the end of Q2 looked like. Almost everyone was down. It was because of the rain, because of the conditions. Also Pecco Bagania, but also Marco Bezzecchi. Even Alex Marquez crashed. But Pecco Bagania, but that happening, he didn't get into the first row, and he was really, really angry at that. And then I remember Polish commentators saying that they were like laughing and saying that Pecco, you should be calm. It's not like you're starting 14th like Mark Marquez, and they were even saying that he shouldn't fall back like to the whole grid. And then he started falling back behind the whole grid. For some time, he was even racing next to Mark Marquez, and then at the last lap, it was Daniela Bastianini, his team mate, who overtook him and took even one more place from him. So it was surprising, and his performance tomorrow is going to depend on how Ducati's team will react to what happened today, especially with the factory riders, because the other teams, Alex Marquez, Ingressioni, amazing stuff. Jorge Martin and Joan Zarco in Pramac, just great. Fighting with Aprilia, fighting with Miller, fighting with Bezzecchi, always there. So it was the problem of Pecco and Enea in the factory team, because I'm not I'm not even talking, unfortunately, about Fabio Di Giannantonio because he's just not a performer this season in Ducati. But I really hope that tomorrow we'll see Aprilia being able to fight even harder, to maybe get into this fight for the win. That would be a great spectacle for us.
Certainly is becoming a really interesting British Grand Prix weekend. Yesterday, the new format sort of gave a bit more meaning to the hour practice session. I was really hoping it would sort of count for the grid because that would put Aleix on pole position. It didn't. I think at times, I was texting Julia as well, saying, do you reckon that should have been red flagged? Towards the end of qualifying, it got really dangerous out there. A lot of riders dropping it in the space of 2 minutes. Alex Marquez was one of them, and he's come through to win the sprint race rather well, to be fair. His first ever win in MotoGP across any of the sprint or main race as well. Didn't manage it on a Honda, and I'm really glad he's managed it on a Ducati. That changeover was very key for him to get away from the team that his brother rode for as well, riding for, but rode coming in as well. Whether or not he was actually good enough was the question going around the paddock. We always knew his talent. He's a world champion in Moto 3 and Moto 2. So really good day for him. I don't think, now if it's dry tomorrow, we're going to see the Ducatis come back through the field, as are the specifically Muni 3R46 bikes, Bezzecchi coming up there. Aprilia could have a good weekend, but KTM also, I think, have gone really well across both of the conditions. They just need to have a bit more grip later on in the race, which they didn't have with Jack Miller, who got a lightning getaway. But then as the track started drying out, they were all on wet tyres, and the medium compound doesn't work with the KTM. So that's got to have a dry race tomorrow, and they could be up there. The other thing that we've got to put out is, as Julia touched on as well, Pecco Bagania, really poor weekend from him. Poor qualifying, really poor sprint race, dropped back on the start as well, had a moment coming out of club. So he's got to have a better weekend tomorrow for main Grand Prix points, but he didn't score any today. And that's the first time he hasn't scored any points since crashing out at COTA. So there's a lot on the line here. So really hopeful that actually we get a close title fight as a result of this race. And also, final one to talk about a really surprise. Just taking a look actually about, it's not coming up further down in the script, Fabio Quartararo. What a stinker he's had as well. Crashed in qualifying because the tyres were too cold, and then he couldn't get them heated up, and then the bike wasn't working, and then it all just kicked off at the end of qualifying one. He starts last and didn't make up a single position in the race either. So he's going to have a real big worry. Whereas Morbidelli, I was praising. We haven't done that for a while. Morbidelli sacked from Yamaha, been replaced by Alex Rins for 2024. Morbidelli is now advertising himself for there you go, perfect from Dimas as well. Advertising for a ride next year, goes in and does a really strong Q1 performance, out qualifying everyone by a second by using his head and realizing that the toe was actually a negative effect at this track because you were caught up in the spray. So he ran on his own, had the best of the conditions, no spray. It was perfect from him as well. Didn't get that clean run in Q2 though, but definitely Morbidelli is a surprise this weekend. So yeah, I reckon we could have an interesting one. If it rains tomorrow, much of the same. If it's dry tomorrow, all changes.
And it can all change. Pecco Bagania will be starting fourth on row 2. Bezzecchi on the pole. And after today's sprint race, he's only 27 points behind Pecco Bagania. So it's really closing in now. But still, as you mentioned, the Ducatis, 6 of them in the top 10. The 2 KTMs, Maverick Vinales in 8th in his Aprilia, and Augusto Fernandez 5th in the Gas Tech 3. Josh, I got to ask you, you mentioned about tomorrow the conditions could be the thing. With that, do you think the Aprilia, Gas or KTM could take the win, or is this really just Ducati's race that they're going to control?
I think we've been surprised a couple of times this year by how off-pace Ducati is at certain points as well. Jerez, they were off the pace. KTM's got the great starts as well, and then it changed around mid-race. But I've got a feeling that gas really surprised me in dry conditions. That really surprised me. And then it doubly surprised me in the sprint race. So Augusto Fernandez has got a click with that Tech 3 gas bikes. That's going to be very strong going into the race tomorrow. KTM, if it's dry, they get a good launch, and that'll be even better. Specifically, I would keep an eye on Jack Miller, who was mega in this run. for the sprint, but lost out later on. So yeah, I've got a feeling if it's anything of the top teams, watch out for Gas and KTM. Aprilia are sort of here and sometimes between the two of them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, because I don't think, it's also, yes, you said, depend on the conditions. We are talking about like two options all the time because of these conditions. Because I think we also got used to Ducati being super strong practically almost always at every circuit. And now in this season, we have a different glimpse of the factory team showing more of its weaknesses sometimes, especially like now in the British Grand Prix. I think most of us, we are so surprised that Pecco Bagania just finished out of any points, Someone could say it's just one race, it's not about, it's Pecco Bagania on a Ducati, and he was 14th. There was both Gas guys were in front of him, and Paul Espargaro, who's coming back after an injury, such a crucial, awful injury that got him out for half of the season, and he's here, he's performing. He was 11th for a time, in front of Marc Marquez and everyone. So yeah, I think we're just really surprised. I think I agree with Josh that if someone is there, you have to watch out for KTM, because especially Jack Miller, because both of the condition we may see tomorrow is able to benefit him, because we know that KTM and Jack, they're strong in weather conditions, but also Jack's been saying that he kind of hopes for more of a stable weather conditions. Even if it's gonna be dry, he'll be pleased. So he's also ready for these dry options. I think when we look at the Ducati as a factory, as a bike, then obviously it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a Ducati in front in the end. Even though I kind of hope that KTM with Jack Miller and Aprilia, presumably looking like that with Maverick Vinales, will try to get into the podium and fight with them. I think it's gonna be Ducati most the controlling, but I don't think necessarily it will be a Ducati of a factory team. It may be Alex Marquez again. For sure, in the fight for the win, it's gonna be Marco Bezzecchi. That is for sure, because he's Pecco's biggest problem right now. Maybe Pecco, if they're gonna repair something that didn't work out today. And then we have Pramac guys, but we have to wait and see how they're gonna perform with the change of weather, because today they were great, and João Zarco is always good when it's raining, He's still seeking that first win in MotoGP class, and it's hard to say when it's finally gonna come. But yeah, I do think it's gonna be a Ducati in front. I love that Gas is there, that Augusto Fernandez is, just performing well in the sprint, but I don't think that in this basic fight between the Ducatis, and there's gonna be Alex Espargaro and Maverick Vinales and Aprilia and the rest of the guys, I don't think for now he stands much of a chance on the Gas to outperform these guys.
Now, when it comes to tomorrow, one of the riders we're going to be watching, of course, as Josh and Julie had mentioned, including Dimas in the chat room, is Franco Morbidelli. Starting 11th, and he will not be back in the Yamaha next year. Alex Rin, he is out due to an injury currently. He'll be in that Yamaha in 2024. Fabio Quartararo, as you mentioned, Josh, just the worst weekend so far. Look at him starting 22nd, nothing today. I got to ask you, starting with you, Julia, why is Alex Rins jumping from Honda, which he's won a race with this year at Circuits of America, to Yamaha, which is clearly just not looking good?
I don't know. If I would like to find an analogy, I would say that Alex Rins is jumping from already sinking ship to the one that may sink, but it's still afloat. Because that's, I think that's how we can describe Honda's performance right now. Especially when we look at Marc Marquez, who was at the back of the grid today, which is just unbelievable that a champion like Marc Marquez, even after all those injuries and with his shape, he's just 18, 19 when his brother is winning and he's the best Honda. I think we couldn't expect a lot from Iker Lecuona, for example, who's just jumping from World Superbikes when he's performing to MotoGP as a replacement for all the injured Honda riders that this bike is just killing. But then we have Taka Nakagami, who's also not performing. There's Joan Mir, who's also came back after injury, but he's still struggling. He finished in front of Mark, if I remember well. But I think there's still rumors that he's gonna evacuate from Honda as well after this season. So I do think that Alex Rins is looking for a new opportunity after he won in Kota. That's right, but when we look at the whole season and their performance and Honda's performance in general and how the future for Honda looks, when it looks like Marc Marquez has a contract for next season, but we know how it's with the contracts. They can maybe for a multiple year deal, but then we maybe see a rider leaving after 1 year. We all know how it works. So there is a risk that Marc Marquez won't be happy to continue his partnership with Honda, after what's happening and how he's been injured because of this bike. So I do think that Alex Rins is putting a little bit more faith into Yamaha than Honda when it's about that. And also, let's remember, he's getting a chance at a factory team. It's always better than moving from satellite to satellite, to different series at all. Like we may see Franco Morbidelli in World Superbikes because there is a free spot in the Yamaha factory at Superbikes because Toprak Razgatlioglu is going to BMW. So this is kind of a free spot for Franco Morbidelli. So I don't think I was surprised by the news of Alex Rins moving to Yamaha. Of course, I do think that the contract, the deal that they offered him, it was a factor. Probably the money, probably some clues that we will never know what was exactly in those deal. But I think there was something that had to convince him to think that it is better to evacuate to Yamaha from Honda in that actual state right now.
From what I've been hearing throughout the weekend as well, and I've been reading up on many sites as well on the journalist track side as well. I've been talking with some of them as well. And from what they gathered from the press release, first of all, LCR and everyone at Honda have not mentioned this at all. They have not mentioned at all that Rins is leaving. They've brushed it under the rug so much, and they've been having a horrible weekend with Takaki Nakagami as well, with their poor bike setup at the moment. So that's already poor relations between the two of them. For what I understand, you're right, Julie, what you said as well about how it's a factory bike, and there's the reason because Rins has only just signed with Honda this year. Of course, he was at Suzuki last year, a factory bike. He signed over to the LCR Honda team as well. The original contract stated that he was the understudy to go up to the main team if anything happened to Mark or to Joan Mir. That didn't happen when they both were injured early on in the season, and now he's injured as well on the LCR bike. There's another factor as well. If he gets offered a factory ride, which he has done at the Yamaha team, there's a break in the contract with Honda and LCR that he can leave the team and go over to a factory bike. So that's what he's done. I also understand it is mainly because he is, as I said earlier, he wasn't the understudy to go up to the main team. He's got fed up with the fact that he has been treated as a second-class rider by Honda this year. He hasn't been given the new Kalex chassis bike to test, where Nakagami has and has crashed it. Mark has and crashed it. Joan Mir has and crashed it. So he's been getting extremely annoyed that he hasn't been given that bike to prove what he's worth. Earlier on in the season, the only race he got given a Honda Grand Prix main team bike was at Kota. He got given Marc Marquez's bike for the weekend, and he went and won it. So he thought, oh, brilliant, guys, look, we can do this. We can do it. Let's all work together. Nope, shut the door. Face palm in as well. Nope, sorry, you're not going to have that anymore. So he's got frustrated. They've mistreated him massively, and he's walked. And it's just another thing with Honda, as in the confidence has gone, the bike's gone, the setup's gone, everybody's jumping ship, and they're looking awful. I mean, Yamaha, as you said, they're sinking, but Honda have well and truly sunk now as well. Somebody shot out the final boards in the lower decks as well, and the whole thing's going down. It's passing the iceberg as well. It's all done now. I am hearing a lot of rumors this weekend that Marc Marquez is only here because he has been forced to be here. I don't know if you've picked up on this, Julia, as well, watching the practice sessions. Me and Megan did up in the commentary box in the hour-long session yesterday. Every time he's getting on the bike, he's walking up to it very gingerly, very carefully getting on as well. He's being helped on and off the bike. He's still not good with his movement, both in the shoulder and his leg. So he's being very gingerly. He wanted a couple more races off. He didn't want to be there. And you've got your star rider, your world champion, who's made his career on this bike. He's been injured time and time again on the bike because you haven't gone down his setup route, and he doesn't want to ride it anymore. And he's only here this weekend because he's been forced to be here, because otherwise they haven't got any big name in the British Grand Prix, which is a big market for Honda. So yeah, it's all going wrong. And I've hearing rumors that he's also having meetings across the weekend with other teams. I've also me and Julia, we discussed it Netherlands as well, about how it was Ducati. I'm hearing he's also looking at KTM. He's looking at Aprilia. I'm also hearing he's looking possibly even at running as a reserve rider for next year, developing the bike, a bit like what Danny Pedrosa's done at KTM, and then coming back on a few wildcards just so he can come back at full fitness, because he's not at full fitness. We saw that at the German Grand Prix, when he crashed in 7 times in 6 sessions. So there's a lot going on. And it's going to be one of our most interesting stories to see what it's going to be. Marc Marquez, when he leaves Honda, will be the news story of the year, because it'll be a very public and very messy divorce. And personally, I like a front row seat, please, to decide who gets the kids or not, because it's going to be hilarious.
Staying with Marc Marquez, Honda, as we all mentioned, qualifying not good for them today, and then finished 18th. Overall, we know he has not finished a race since last season. He has DNF'd the races he has started. Joshua, starting with you, do you anticipate Marc Marquez will finish in the points, considering the MotoGP compared to F1, the top 15 positions pay points?
I must admit, if he was full fitness, I'd say, yeah, he could finish. But looking at what he did in the sprint, he dropped back and back and back throughout the race. No, he's going to retire at some point. Although, unusually for Marc, he hasn't crashed this weekend. He's not gone down once. He's kept it on the deck. Even in the worst of the conditions, he's kept it on. So I would say he won't finish tomorrow. Or if he does, I'll be the first to give him a massive round of applause in the commentary box for finishing a race for the first time since Valencia. Was he even in Valencia? I don't think he was he? Was he in Valencia? I can't remember. I mean, look at my notes now up in the commentary box.
No, God, he's been missing for so many rounds that I don't think
he wasn't.
He wasn't. He was injured. He had diplopia.
Yeah, Mugello. He hasn't finished a race in over a year, because it was Mugello, because he took races off, didn't he? And then he didn't come back until the end of the year. Yeah. So, wow.
He had another episode of diplopia then, and after that he broke something again. I think it was his thumb, and then he had this operation, and the fourth one on his arm, the one that fixed it almost. So yeah. And then he was crashing because Honda, we all know how the bike was behaving all this time.
Unbelievable. Over a year then. A year and 3 months. Wow. Marc's really got to get that chip on his shoulder.
I think it goes into some kind of record. And, for what Joe asked us, I think for the first time since I've joined this show, and it was in 2021, I think. I'm not gonna say that Marcus can do this, because I don't think for the first time that he can do this, to be honest. Because what we've seen and how the Honda bikes behave, and what Josh said, that he didn't crash, got me thinking, this man didn't crash a whole weekend because he's not trying to be on the limit anymore. And Marc Marquez is someone who is known for being on the limit because he wants to push everything out of the bike to get a result. And if he's not on the limit and he's not fast, he's not trying, it means that he doesn't want to. So as just said, he just doesn't want to be here anymore, I think. We've seen that he's in discomfort, he's in pain, everyone's mentioning that the relationship with Honda is becoming worse and worse. Alex Rins is leaving, one of the best riders we can actually have right now. Then for sure it's gonna be Jean Mir leaving soon, for what it looks like right now. Taka Nakagami is in the place to be sacked, to be honest. After this season, he's been not performing. But honestly, I do think that if they're gonna sack Taka Nakagami, who's next to Mark, the only rider who kind of knows this bike, I don't know who's gonna be willing to take up on this challenge to survive on this bike besides Ai Ogura, who's a Japanese rider in Moto2, and he's sponsored by Idemitsu, who's also a half sponsor of LCR, to be honest. Yeah. So honestly, I would be really impressed with Mark if, besides all of this discomfort, he will be able to get to the line tomorrow safely, and he will be able to continue from that he finally finished this race and he's in there, and he checked himself on a full race distance, to be honest. But I don't think he can do a lot, because when for the most of the sprint he was the best Honda, being on 17th and 19th place. This is unbelievable for a factory like Honda, and for the fact that when he was overtook by Raul Fernandez on Aprilia, all the last places we had were by the Japanese manufacturers, Honda and Yamaha. So this was just you can say the racing was great in the sprint. Aprilia and the Ducatis, KTM, amazing. But then we look at the other side of the grid and we see all the Japanese bikes just being, kind of on the level of Moto2 or Moto3 sometimes, comparing to the rest of the grid. So honestly, it looks kind of terrifying to see that we have a grid becoming split in two parts. The best one that can fight, and then we have Honda and Yamaha sometimes.
It's crazy just to think. Not too long ago, the Honda, Marquez, Repsol, they just look so unstoppable. And now it's to the point where people are just bailing. And Repsol has been such a long time loyal sponsor of Honda and MotoGP for the longest time. I'm really wondering, could that relationship start to get fractured with all the lack of performances? And then Yamaha, as you said, they just last year we were also surprised when Fabio Quattro re-signed up with them again, and it's just not looking well at all. And of course, we'll be following MotoGP news, especially whatever happens with Marc Marquez Honda for 2024 right here on the Grid Network on YouTube. And we'll recap the race tomorrow. Julia, before we go, it's been a while. We have to ask you who you think is going to be the winner. I feel this is the hardest question for everyone. Pick a winner for MotoGP British Grand Prix. Who do you see taking the win?
Yeah, I think Josh agreed with me, because for the whole show we've been talking about the two options of the result depending on the weather. So it's I would just, if it's gonna rain, then it's gonna be this rider, and then it's gonna be this rider. But to be honest, because today at the end of the race, this is something I want to say. We've seen Marco Bezzecchi becoming super quick and absolutely racing after Alex Marquez. If we had an 11-lap sprint, Marco Bezzecchi would win. He would be the victor of this sprint. So to be honest, if I have to choose, because depending on conditions, it's gonna be hard, I would go for Marco Bezzecchi.
Marco Bezzecchi, I think he's a popular pick this weekend. And of course, we encourage everyone to comment in the chat with who he thinks is going to win the MotoGP race, British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Now, of course, one of the other races that we have coming up this weekend, NTT INDYCAR Series, and we're very excited to have Isha and Alex back. And thank you so much again, Julia, for your time. Isha, what can you tell us about potentially Joshua's favorite race?
Yeah, so Nashville is hosting the 3rd annual Music City Grand Prix, which, as you mentioned, is Joshua's favorite race of the year. And starting next year, there will be some changes, as the race will have a modified track layout, and it will be going through Broadway and the season finale. In 2021, Long Beach was the season finale, and many praised the championship deciding atmosphere in Long Beach. So, starting with Josh, does having the championship decided at a street course add to the atmosphere, and is Nashville the right choice?
I think it does. I was really happy with how the Long Beach season finale happened as well. It gave it a bit of a panaz to have one of the most crown jewel events decided. And to me, I think it was one of the most exciting Long Beach races we've had in a very long time, because usually that track, like it was this year, you fell asleep for the first 90 minutes. It was the only race of the year across any series we did that I literally had to sort of keep the commentators alive with me as well. I was commentating with Josh T and Tom Dillon, and I was having to prod them over the screen to say, look, this has happened now. He's locked up. Perfect. And we got a great ending. So I think having a championship finale at a street course just adds a bit more danger to it. Laguna Seca has been brilliant for a championship finale. I love that track with all my heart. It's some of a great undulation as well, with the elevation changes from high to low at the bottom of the corkscrew as well. And I loved MotoGP there. I really wish they'd go back for a race. So when it came back on for INDYCAR, I was like, yes, brilliant, well done. It was actually the race that got me back into commentating on it permanently as well, because I took a year off of INDYCAR and I did that one race in 2019. So it's a really strong track. But down Broadway to crown a champion, it's literally perfect. It's poetry to do it. This track, yes, it's going to change, but looking at it today as well, it's one of my favorite races, not just because of the track lap, but because of the atmosphere you get there. There's such a party you get. So I think the change is we keep the bridge perfect. That was always my favorite part, because it's coming into those braking zones. Just after that, we get the accidents, we get the dive bombs, we get all the big changes in the race, just as Colton Herta. So that's going to be fun. A green flag and a checker flag down the Broadway area is going to be brilliant. We're shutting it down. It's up there with Las Vegas for Formula One now, and Monaco. It's a really good atmosphere. So yeah, I think it's going to be brilliant. Nashville is the right choice. If I could choose another street course on the calendar, I would have said Detroit was a great one to end the championship on as well. I thought Detroit this year worked quite well. Once we got into the rhythm of it, we all accepted we weren't at Belle Isle. I thought it was actually quite a good race. It was very well paced and very well energetic. And Toronto was also interesting, but it's not. You can't end the INDYCAR Series in Canada, so you can't do that really. So yeah, I think it's a perfect combination, and we don't. Long Beach has sort of got the spring feel, hasn't it? So yeah, Nashville's the only one that could fit in for the end of the season, unless I'm missing another street circuit that's gone over my head. Bring back Sao Paulo. That was a good track.
Yeah, I can tell you that with Nashville, I think vibes alone, that will be amazing to have as a season finale. Racing wise, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to wait and see. I do like the new layout that they're going to do a lot more than the current one. The current one's a bit messy in my opinion, but I'm a big fan. They're going to be racing on Broadway. That's so cool. And as Adam says in the chat here, the track layout in Nashville 2024 reminds me of Big Dipper. I can see it, yeah. One of my friends was saying it looked like a spoon, which is just funny. Yeah,
We were saying
and
oil
then
can.
another comment.
An oil can.
Yeah, another comment. The Nashville Street Circuit, the 2024 layout, and Nashville goes to Nashville season finale. I'm not sure what you're saying there, but I am excited for the finale to be there. And I do kind of wish it was the oval in the super speedway. I think that would be really cool, but man, it'll be a lot of fun for sure. And if like you gave an option, you said Detroit. I think I would like it at like a gateway. That'd be a lot of fun, I think. Just get it back on an oval. I do like the idea of having it at Nashville super speedway, but if we have to have it on a street course, I think Nashville's a great idea, just on vibes alone.
Yeah, and as we all know, a street course always does add a bit of chaos to the atmosphere, and while Nashville has certainly been chaotic, Chip Ganassi Racing has won both races despite the unpredictable nature of the race. And if we take a look at the last 2 years, we had Scott Dixon win back in 2022 and Marcus Ericsson win in 2021. And we know that their teammate Alex Palou has been strong this year, and he has a 1 podium finish at Nashville. And also rookie Marcus Armstrong, he has been gaining a lot of positive attention for his road course results. So starting with Alex, does Chip Ganassi Racing have an advantage over the field in this track, or did he simply just survive the prior 2 races?
Yeah, Chip Ganassi Racing, not just at this track, I think they have the advantage everywhere. I mean, just look at Alex Palou. He's basically the Max Verstappen of IndyCar right now. Everywhere except the ovals, that's Joseph Newgarden's territory. But yeah, I think all they got to do, Chip Ganassi Racing, just keep doing what they've been doing. And Alex Palou is going to be pretty well set for this championship as long as they don't have any issues such as a mechanical failure or an incident, which it's Nashville, that he might get caught up in something. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think Marcus, what was it, 2021, went over the backers of Bourdais, managed to finish the race in brilliant fashion as well. As I'm just getting weather updates actually from the circuit, that's what I've been keep checking on, because qualifying's coming up in around about, 45 minutes, and I've got to comment on that. So yeah, I think Bourdais going over as well, Ericsson winning the race after having nose damage, all those red flags. Last year as well was a very chaotic race. Dixon managed to just take control of it. And I think last year, Dixon, like we saw at the start of 2020, sort of got back his groove last year at this track as well. He got into the spirit of things and dominated the weekend. So it's definitely possible. Now we've got Alex Palou, who's been on a massive winning streak, of course, this season. We were talking about on the show beforehand in days gone past. Now we're coming in. He was straight out there when the green flag went for practice 2, which had a rain delay of over an hour. He went off the track, came on, found the limit, pushed incredibly hard, and did really, really well. Then, yesterday, he was straight out there, getting all the grips, did the most laps of anybody. So Palou's in a really good position to do it this weekend. But Chip Ganassi Racing, I think, like this track because it suits their car setup so well. It's a car that can handle the bumps, whereas we've seen with the Penske's of Newgarden, McLaughlin and Power, they've really struggled across both dry and wet conditions this weekend. So many lockups and trips down the escape roads, whereas the one time it's happened to each of the Chip Ganassis, they've come in, changed the setup and gone again. So they've got a really sweet setup, and I think they could be on for good qualifying in 45 minutes time.
I will say that Scott McLaughlin, with his supercars experience, he's been the one at Nashville, especially last year. He's been able to really figure these street courses out compared to Newgarden and Power lately.
I think he did 10 pit stops last year, which really annoyed everybody. It's like, why did he come in 10 times? Some of them were red flags, yes, but it's like
still
10
got on
stops.
podium.
He did. I know. I couldn't believe that. Unbelievable stuff. 10 podiums and still finished on the podium.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I believe that we will see some chaos this race because practice 2 was mostly rained out today due to the weather, and then we also have rain in the forecast all day. So maybe there will be a small window for qualifying today, but we only had about 27 minutes of practice due to a red flag late in the session. So starting with Josh, with little practice, how chaotic do you think qualifying will be? And if there's no qualifying, can Josh be in for a long Music City Grand Prix?
I am going to be in for a very long Grand Prix, aren't I? Tomorrow we're going to be like red flag, yes, caution. Interesting stat popped up during the commentary actually. This track has an average of 8.6% of cautions, whereas at Indianapolis it's at 7.8. So this track has a higher caution percentage rate than the Indianapolis 500. That to me is absolutely insane. We only held 2 races here and it's got a higher caution count than over 100 years of Indianapolis. You can't write it. I think if qualifying doesn't happen, I think it'll be safe all round. The last thing you want to do is crash the car, destroy it, and then go into the wall tomorrow, which is only, 10 minutes long, and then go into a full race at this track? No. If the stewards are smart, they would cancel qualifying before having any of the problems. So fingers crossed they have their smartness on heads on them like they did with practice. But crucially, eventually, everyone did get out there and got a couple of laps in. Rod Brown says Scotty has a bad strategy lately and the car's been ordinarily. Yeah, it has been McLaughlin, especially at Iowa. So I reckon if we get the qualifying session cancelled, it would be the correct decision. And with the little practice we had, they are prepared, but we're in for an interesting Group A, B, 12, 6 running order. I can't wait. I hope it doesn't happen though, strangely.
Yeah, I'd like to see this qualifying session. This is a crucial one too, because Joseph Newgarden has been struggling in qualifying. And if he's going to challenge Alex Palou in this championship, he needs to qualify better than like 14th, where he tends to do on the road and street courses sometimes. He needs to get in that fast 6. So that's something I'd like to watch. If we don't get it, they said on the Peacock broadcast that it will go back on practice times. I'm not sure which session. So that'll be interesting to see if that does happen. But yeah, this would be a make or break qualifying session specifically for Newgarden, because he made up a ton of points at Iowa, maybe not as much as he wanted, but if we have it, it could be huge for this championship.
Yes, definitely. And, if we take a look at the first practice yesterday, Alex Palou was the second fastest, and he wants to take firm control of the championship picture. Today in the rain, he was 9th fastest, Newgarden was 8th, and Ericsson proved to be the fastest. So he can still leave Nashville with the points lead no matter what, but Newgarden could close the gap if he has a great day and Palou has a bad one. So Alex, do you think this adds pressure on the points leader to points race to minimize a mistake and lose a good size lead with 5 races remaining?
Yeah, like I just said, I think Newgarden just needs to maximize his points. And it's hard to put pressure on Alex Palou, because that guy can just do anything and just be unfazed by it completely. Like, he had a broken wing for the second half of Toronto and still finished good. Like, it just did not matter. He's unstoppable, it feels like sometimes. But like I said, Newgarden just needs to try and outdo Palou, which, can you do that outside of an oval? I don't know.
That's the question, isn't it? Because he's just got this little bit of... Coming to this weekend, we've seen throughout the year, he's been like, oh yeah, this is going well, isn't it? It's all going really well for me. I'm championship leader. Indy 500 didn't disrupt me because it was double points, not anymore. Yep. So it was all good. Got through that month of May all right. Didn't win it, but still leader. Went on a winning spree straight afterwards. And he's been a bit, to use a better term, he's been a bit enthusiastic about his championship hopes. Now he's coming in this weekend, especially after not very good last couple of races, especially back as well what we had in Toronto. He's sort of gone, oh, hang on a minute, I've got to concentrate here. There's still a long way to go. So I think he's straight back on it, and now he's focused. And it's not started to get to him, the pressure yet, but he is focused a little bit. And if it's a wet race, then one wrong move, your championship could be gone. And just an update about if it is a wet race. We've just had the breaking news that the Indy NXT qualifying has been cancelled due to the weather. So it's obviously that bad. We can't run those cars, and they're at lower RPM limit than those of the Indy cars. So if that is happening, it looks possible that qualifying could be cancelled, and it goes by second practice times, which will be in the same row. So not everybody completed a run in practice too. So there could be a lot of arguments whether or not we use Friday's times rather than Saturday morning's times. So it's going to go really interesting. Another thing they could do is hold qualifying tomorrow morning instead of warm-up and have a grid, or base it on the championship order. So we're going to be in for an interesting run, but I'm going to be in for another podcast commentary in around about 45 minutes. It's due to be an hour. I don't want to do it because I hope they call it off early because I've got a sore throat.
That's a very valid reason.
Yeah, and we have a new driver making his first NTT INDYCAR Series start. Linus Lundqvist, he's the 24-year-old Swedish driver who will be substituting for Simon Pagenaud, who is still out after the scary crash he had in mid-Ohio. And he was 11th fastest in the first practice on Friday, and obviously he would love to get more track time before Sunday's race. It was said on the grid tonight that his goal is to go as fast as possible Saturday and bring the car home in one piece Sunday. At one point today, though, he did go into the runoff section and stalled. So Josh, with the rain and the delay, how much does this disadvantage Linus, and does he change his approach?
He said, didn't he, after practice one, disappointed it wasn't first. So he's definitely got the, I'm taking every opportunity I can to enjoy this. He's a former winner here, as we said as well. He won here back in 2021 in the Indy Lights, as it was back then, not Indy NXT. So he's got the track experience, which is good. First time he's actually been put in as well for the proper Grand Prix INDYCAR cars, and he's been thrown in at one of the hardest tracks on the calendar, so not exactly brilliant. But 11th, and then looking strong, yeah, he'll be fine. That little runoff, don't worry about it. He's fine in the limits. He did bring out the red flag, though, and stop the session with 2 minutes early, so that was disappointing. But he didn't break anything, got it back to the pits, and looked like he had a confident session. So I'm expecting some interesting things from him tomorrow, and hopefully it's not as bad as Tom Blomqvist, who got his race cut short at Toronto at turn 1 by Jack Harvey hitting the side of him. So fingers crossed it's going to be a good run.
Yeah, with Linus Lundqvist, I think he just needs to try and have a clean race as possible. And again, it's Nashville. I don't know if that's possible, but just try and stay out of trouble. I don't think he needs to necessarily set the world on fire or anything. I mean, he has the same kind of expectations that Tom Blomqvist had at Toronto, and that wasn't Blomqvist's fault at Toronto either. So I think it's just try and keep it clean, try and finish the race as high of a position as you can. But other than that, I think he can just do the best he can and try and give that 60 car a clean finish that it hasn't really had in a while.
Yeah, and looking towards the Music City Grand Prix tomorrow, Chip Ganassi Racing is looking for 3 consecutive wins at Nashville. There will be a full report on the Grid Live wrap-up. And Josh, before we let you go, thank you for being on the air, and there's a link in the video description to your channel. So before you leave, what are your picks for Pick a Winner for IndyCar, MotoGP, and NASCAR?
Okay, for IndyCar, I will go with... I think, from what we're talking about, Alex Palou, I think he's got a good shot. I think that's got to be up there. For MotoGP, as Julia pointed out, it's a bit of a mix of if you get 2. So I've got to nail them down. It's going to be quite difficult, actually. Brad Binder. I'll go with Brad Binder to win because I think that KTM's got pace. And for NASCAR, you're going to get onto it, but I don't know. Is Josh Berry driving this weekend? Is he? Yes, he is. Right, I'm going to go with him. Mr. Super Sub of 2023. He's had a great year, hasn't he? He's done every type of car. Brilliant stuff for him. And if he's got to be, is he on the Cup next year? Do we know that yet? Is he taking a permanent seat yet?
He's taken the 4 car.
Good.
Yep.
Great. I thought I reported that on the grid tonight, but I wanted to make sure before I say it. But yeah, brilliant. So honestly, I'm so impressed with Josh Berry this year. Absolutely mega impressed. So I'm going to go with him. As my outside pick a winner, just because I've been on the hype train across Grid Network, USON, everything on Twitter, everything. So yeah, he will win a race, and that's it.
Wow.
If Josh Berry pulls that off,
in that 42 car.
Wow, that's going to be some headlines Monday and a lot of discussion. And of course, we'll be discussing Grid wrap up tomorrow. Thank you so much, as always, Joshua. Before we get into the NASCAR Cup Series, an update on World Rally Championship Rally Finland, the home country race for Kalle Rovenpera. Started off really great, but the second day, that was a chaotic day. We saw Kalle Rovenpera got close to a puddle that just launched his car upside down, perfectly on his roof. He was done for the day. Fellow countryman Eskapakalapi, he was looking really good. He goes wide into the corner, and one more scarier videos of onboard camera head on into a birch tree. Really hard to watch that, especially someone that grew up with those trees around Alaska. It's just something where definitely Escalapap, just a tough race. Sorry, getting a little tongue-tied there. And then one of the big things, Elfyn Evans, he is now leading this race. He has essentially a big lead because Autonic, another person that was a favorite for this race weekend, he had mechanical issues in that Ford. Him and his teammate, Ford just seems to be not doing anything in the World Rally Championship lately. There's only 4 stages left. Elfyn Evans, he's looking to have full control of this race. Thierry Neuville's in second place in the Hyundai, but overall, it looks like it's going to be another Toyota Gazoo racing win. Ford, a tough break, but Isha, when it comes to Ford, they're going to be looking at this weekend in the Cup Series.
Yeah, taking a look at NASCAR now. The NASCAR Cup Series is at the last oval before 2 road courses and Daytona to close out the regular season. And this weekend, we have 37 cars in the field, of which 12 are locked in the playoffs with a win. And 4 seems to be the lucky number right now, as we have 4 spots unclaimed and 4 remaining races. So Alex, will we see a first-time or repeat winner? And if a first-time winner, who will be the most nervous?
I won't spoil my pick a winner yet, but I think we're going to see a first-time winner on the season this weekend. But if we do get that, I think you got to look at Michael McDowell being the most nervous, just because he's currently 16th on the playoff grid, and a winner, winner I think is going to happen within the playoffs. I'll give you that little hint. But I do think Michael McDowell, less and less spots are going to be opening up here. So he's still going to be more nervous the closer this gets, because that's going to be less spots he can make up in points. So I think just Michael McDowell, he's going to really hope that we just don't get any more winners in general.
Michael McDowell, I think he'll be a little nervous if we get another first-time winner this year. But another driver, I feel that's going to be even more nervous if he doesn't win this weekend. If somebody else does, especially below that cut line, Bubba Wallace. Because when you look at the remaining races, 2 road courses, they're not exactly Bubba Wallace's strength when it comes to the regular season or in the playoffs. The Roval, not exactly his best friend. Then Daytona, we know Toyotas, they're always faster. We've seen Bubba Wallace. He could run well at Daytona. But you're just at the mercy of where that big one comes up that the Savannah Toyota has with so few Toyotas compared to Chevrolet and Ford. I think Bubba Wallace will be the one that'll be a little bit more nervous if we see a different winner this weekend.
Yeah, and taking a look at Ford, they have to feel pretty good entering the weekend, as they have won every Cup Series race here since 2018, making it 8 races in a row. And if we look at Chevy, the last Chevy driver to win here was Kyle Larson in 2017 with Chip Ganassi, and the only active Chevy driver to win at Michigan. And the last Toyota driver to win here was in 2015, and that was Matt Kenseth. Denny Hamlin is the only active Toyota driver to win here in 2011. So, Joe, do you think Ford has the upper hand here, or could we see Chevy and Toyota end the Ford winning streak?
I think the winning streak is at a very real risk of being snapped this weekend. Kyle Larson, if that Hendricks team could come out with a good setup, he's going to get, I think, really good performance out of that Chevrolet and be contending for the win. The Toyota drivers, I see Christopher Bell being a driver that could potentially have a good one. Bubba Wallace, we can't count out. So overall, I feel even though you haven't had a lot of race winners at Michigan in the Chevrolet or Toyota camps, I don't think Ford exactly has that speed in the past years where they were just one of the bets to go out there and get the win. I think this is a good opportunity for Chevrolet, Toyota, try to get somebody else in victory lane. And that winning streak by Ford, which is really impressive to see that Ford has been that good here in Michigan. The big thing is the speed. We just don't seem to have everything there. And I think you're going to be looking at a Toyota or a Chevy in victory lane.
Yeah, I'm not as confident that the winning streak will fall. I do think it's possible. I think it's more likely than it probably has been in the past couple of years. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting because, Kevin Harvick is really good here. Ryan Blaney's really good here. But also, Bubba Wallace is really good at Michigan. And, Hendrick Motorsports, they could rebound after a rough race last weekend and just finish 1, 2, 3, 4 for all we know. So I think it's anyone's race, quite honestly, especially because Michigan races a bit differently than it did before. But yeah, I think we'll see. I think it'll be very interesting for sure.
Yeah, and I believe we have a comment in the chat room. So Ben says, talk about an owner's playoff shakeup. So if we look towards another driver who's motivated for a win this weekend, that will be Brad Keselowski, as a bad pit stop at Richmond did ruin his race. He is comfortably in the playoffs as long as we do not have new winners. So Alex, is a race win the only way for Brad to rebound from Richmond's disappointment, or would a solid run help?
First, I want to reply to that comment. If Josh Berry won that race, like Josh was saying earlier, that would be crazy. And yeah, that would be immense shakeup to the playoff for the owners. That'd be nuts. But for Brad, I'm not too worried about him necessarily. I think last week he was just trying a bit too hard to try winning his first time as an owner. But, Michigan, that's a track. He's from Michigan. I think he wants to win there just as much as he wants to win the Daytona 500. I don't think a win is the only way he needs to rebound. I think like a solid top 5. He still finished solid last week at Richmond, even after that mistake. So I think just a solid run is all Brad Keselowski needs, especially with how many points he has up on the playoff cut.
That's the key. I feel Brad Keselowski has to take that step back, realize you're comfortably in the playoffs, even when we have a different winner this weekend from outside the top 16. Just put together a good solid run, because we know the road course is going to be unpredictable. he could really just use this as a motivator to, okay, let's get some momentum before we enter the road courses. And then Daytona, he's another person that he's good at Talladega. Daytona,
Yeah.
try to get the win there, but I think overall he has to feel pretty good with the progress. Yeah, last week's going to sting for a while. We know race car drivers always talk about the one that got away. This is going to be one of those races at Richmond. But overall, I think he could really just put it behind him and go for the best finish he can this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. And from a driver in the top 16 to one clawing back up, we have Chase Elliott. He's 40 points away from the playoff field. Realistically speaking, he could point his way into the playoffs. However, a mistake can be very costly at this point, as one poor finish will put him back into a must-win situation. So, Joe, do you think Chase Elliott and his team sacrificed going for the win to secure a solid point stay at Michigan?
I don't want to be Chase Elliott's crew chief this weekend because we've seen how in the past, Chase Elliott's crew chief, if a call goes against what they were hoping, Chase Elliott fans are just all over saying how they need a new crew chief. This is going to really come down to how the race plays out, especially that third stage. If you have a situation where everyone's going to be tight on fuel, if Chase Elliott's a little bit towards the back, you know he's going to be trying to save everything he can to get towards the finish. Michigan is notorious for having fuel mileage races. Since we have the stages come in, that has been a little less frequent, but that could easily be the case. If we have a late caution, depending on where he's running, he might gamble to try to pick up more positions he's further back. But if he's in the front, we've seen this really just get the best, where if he pits and everybody else stays out, he's in trouble. So overall, I think he is in a really hard spot. And it's not just Chase Elliott, it is that crew chief. This is, I think, a very big pressure weekend for that crew chief, because one of the big things, a bad race weekend, as you mentioned, Isha, it could be in a must-win situation on the two road courses, which, granted, Chase Elliott is good in the road courses, especially Watkins Glen. But you don't want the unpredictable nature of Indianapolis road course going there dependent on the win. Same with Daytona. He's good at the restrictor plates, super speedway tracks. You just don't want to be dependent on those. If you can pick up those points, especially a big point swing today, it's going to feel really good. And I think it's going to be pins and needles for that crew chief and the strategy team there at the number 9 Napa.
For sure. I think with Chase Elliott, the main thing they need to get is stage points. They have not been getting those since he's been back, like, at all. And last week, he gained 16 points on Michael McDowell, but that was only because, one, he had some stage points, and two, Michael McDowell's strategy did not work out. If Michael McDowell finished where he normally would be, he wouldn't have gained those points. So he's really just going to need, one, the stage points, and also a strategy at the end to be like in the top 5. I think it's realistic he could still make it in on points, but the way he's been running, I'm not sure it is realistic, and his best chance of winning is probably Watkins Glen. That is where he got his very first career win at. And because I don't think you can rely on a win at Indy, which that's going to be chaotic, and then Daytona is even more chaotic. It's just, he's just in a situation right now where he just needs more points, and he could have gotten a lot of those points at other races during the stages that he just didn't get.
Yeah, I think this weekend's going to be really important for Chase Elliott and his team. And, you know, if we take a look at last year, Bubba Wallace won the pole in a Toyota and Kevin Harvick won the race in a Ford. So Kevin Harvick leads all active drivers with 6 wins at Michigan. However, he is still winless this year, and a win here would be a big milestone for him and Stewart-Haas Racing. If Harvick or any of his teammates win at Michigan, Stewart-Haas Racing will tie Hendricks Motorsport and Joe Gibbs Racing with 8 wins at Michigan. Alex, do you think Kevin Harvick can get the win? And if not, does he risk going winless increase significantly?
Kevin Harvick can absolutely win this race, because all those Ford wins we're talking about at Michigan, majority of them are Kevin Harvick, just him in that 4 car. So this is probably his best shot at winning a race before he concludes his career in a few weeks. But I'm trying to think if there's any other races that he could probably win, like Phoenix, but that's a championship finale. If he's not in that championship 4, I don't see him winning that. So I mean, yeah, this is probably Kevin Harvick's last big shot at winning a race, but they called him the closer for a reason, and he could get a win anywhere. I think he's still got it in him, but I think if anywhere he's gonna get it, I think it'll be here at Michigan.
I have to agree with you. Michigan, I think, is the best bet for Kevin Harvick to get a win. The road courses, Daytona, that's something where I don't feel Kevin Harvick being one of the drivers there that could be up towards the front, consistently controlling the race. They're unpredictable, a lot out of your control. When it comes to the playoffs, it looks very safe to bet that Kevin Harvick will be in the playoffs unless he has 4 horrible races leading up to the Southern 500. He's won at Darlington, been successful at Kansas, and Bristol. Almost won that race before. If he could win in the first round of playoffs, that'll be huge for him because, as you mentioned, Alex, and I think this is something we've seen time and time again when it comes to the playoffs, once you're seen to be out of the playoffs, traditionally, it's always playoff drivers winning in each round. Very rarely do you see a driver outside of the playoffs take that win, besides last year's first round. But overall, I think for Kevin Harvick, this is his best bet for a win. If he doesn't get a win, the first round of playoffs, Darlington, Kansas, Bristol will be a good opportunity. But if he doesn't get a win there and is out of the playoffs, I'm afraid he might be winless. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Kevin Harvick if he could get that win. Speaking about getting that win, Alex, time for everyone's favorite game.
Yes, it's time for Pick a Winner. Matt B and Alex F both gained points this weekend so far, and they could still get a sweep. If you're outside the top 10, you get 1 bonus point for your first correct guess. If you're outside the top 20, you get 2 bonus points for each correct guess. If you're in the chat room, comment with who you think will win this weekend in each respective race. Joe, we'll start with you with MotoGP. I don't know anything. I learned a lot earlier with Josh and Julia about MotoGP, but who do you think's going to win in MotoGP?
I feel this is going to be really hard because, as they were talking about, the weather is going to be a big factor, but I'm leaning towards a Ducati easily. And I would say when it comes to wet weather, Ducati, I think I'm going to go with Marco Bezzecchi. He's proved he could do it in the wet weather. Valentino Rossi is going to be thrilled to do that, and he's going to close up the championship. That's going to be my pick for MotoGP.
Awesome. Moving on to IndyCar, the Music City Grand Prix in Nashville. My pick for this weekend, I think you have to go with Alex Palou. He's just on another level from everyone else.
Alex Palou is on another level. Depending on what happens with qualifying, will he get that opportunity to get towards the front? If he doesn't, boy, it's going to be really hard to see, it's a tricky pass. It's in track. We know it could be chaotic, especially wet. I think I'm going to go with somebody we'll see our first repeat winner. The driver that won it by going airborne the first year.
Ooh.
I think he'll do it again. Marcus Ericsson is my pick for the Music City Grand Prix.
And Ericsson, that'd be a solid win because he has all these contract negotiations going on right now. He's allowed to talk to other teams as of the first. He has a lot on his mind, so I think that'd be a really good win for him. Moving on to the NASCAR Firekeepers Casino 400 at Michigan. My pick, you might have guessed it by now, is Kevin Harvick. I think he's going to get another win at Michigan, add on to his total there, and lock himself into the playoffs.
I'm going with a Toyota. I'm going with Bubba Wallace. I feel he has been really showing a lot of pace. Lately, it's been hit or miss, but yes, last weekend at Richmond, I think has to feel really good. I think Bubba Wallace is going to go out there, get the win, and be in the playoffs. That'll be huge for that 23-11 team. Of course, one of the big things, we are all out of time, but we encourage everyone, be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs, and follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and we always post up there as well too, more content as well as our pick winner and of course the grid ranking. Invest in us through Patreon, where we read your name on the air, help us get to the track, pay the bills, and of course, buy me a coffee, where you can buy a cup of coffee for a particular on-air person here at the Grid Network. Just be sure in the message you make it specific to who you wish to buy a cup of coffee for. Right here in the Grid Network, will be on the air tomorrow for a Grid Live wrap-up. Final comment, looking forward to the Shane Van Gisbergen oval race, then the Indy road course. Alex, I got to ask you before we go off the air, your response when you heard the news Shane Van Gisbergen is doing Indianapolis Raceway Park, the Truck Series.
He is serious about getting into NASCAR. SVG is. Running a truck race at IRP is an interesting choice. You're gonna be getting bumping and banging there. You're gonna get the true NASCAR experience, SVG, and I think it's a great opportunity. It's with Nice. That's a team that can win in the truck series. So honestly, I think if he performs well in that, you can book him for racing full time somewhere. He's mentioned maybe part time. He's mentioned possibly full time. He doesn't really know yet. But if he runs like top 10, top 5 in that truck race, you can book it. He will be full time next year somewhere.
As you say, he's going to get the full experience of beating and banging. All the discussion about, there's a lack of respect in the truck series, and you're going to Indianapolis Raceway Park.
Oh, just wait.
Already, we're seeing the comment Rod Brown with that, and then of course Ben Schneider, more SVG on the Encore show every Monday. So be sure to tune in. Grid Encore Monday. For Isha Azim and from Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races. Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.